All right, today we're going to talk about quote analysis. This should be pretty quick. Um, there's not that much that I'm going to tell you that's very technical, but we're going to look at some examples and just so you get an idea of what I'm looking for every time you use a quote. Um, we want to do things with the quote, not just throw them in and move on. All right. So in order for us to do this, I think we're going to have to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit, and as it says it right here, a little bit about incorporating quotes, and then we'll get into analyzing quotes because they're kind of related. Okay, let's see this slideshow. Um, so I've seen, we're still struggling with the difference between dropping quotes versus incorporating quotes. And I understand that maybe that's because some of you didn't take enough time with the first video. But I just want to go over it one more time. This is an example of dropping quotes. And I don't want you to do this in our class, in our English class. In English classes, in history classes, in my education classes, I've seen we always want to incorporate quotes. We don't want to just drop quotes. Now, I've also taken journalism classes, and I know in journalism classes, dropping quotes is fine. All right. But in this class, we don't want to drop quotes. And it says that right here. Don't drop quotes. All right. And the definition of dropping a quote is, if you look here, this sentence, mass media is our prime purveyor of that cultural hegemony, by which I mean that media is largely responsible for how we know what we know. This entire sentence is a quote. It starts as a quote, it ends as a quote. There's no place where we explain the quote prior to the quote, and that's what I need before you use a quote. This, starting a quote, ending a quote, and having that be the entire sentence, that is the definition of dropping a quote. So you might say, well, I have a lead in here. Reality TV has a large impact on how we think as a society. But I need the lead in to be in the same sentence as the quote. All right? So this is something I don't want to see. I don't want to see it ever. I want to see you incorporating quotes, and that's what this shows right here. So reality TV has a large impact on how we think as a society. It's the same sentence. And then here is the signal phrase, or here is how I'm going to incorporate the quote from Jennifer Posner all the way to claiming. That is my signal phrase, and we'll talk about signal phrases on the next slide. But this is how I incorporate quotes. All right. Jennifer Posner, author of many pop culture texts, explains how reality TV can influence the surrounding culture, claiming mass media is our prime purveyor of that cultural hegemony, by which I mean that media is largely responsible for how we know what we know. So I have put my own language prior to the quote. What it does is it prepares the reader to understand what this quote is going to refer to. It kind of preps them for the quote. It makes the quote more effective. All right. And what we have in this, and what this is called, is a signal phrase, Jennifer Posner all the way down to claiming. What we have is who said the quote. We need that, Jennifer Posner. And not just who said the quote, but why that person is important. Hey, that person, I want to listen to Jennifer Posner because she is an author of many pop culture texts. She is a professional when it comes to pop culture texts. And I just realized that her name has two N's in it. So it's who it is, Jennifer Posner, why that person matters. All right. The context of the quote explains how reality TV can influence the surrounding culture. All right. That is what she's referring to. So I know before I get to mass media, first of all, she says mass media, but her entire chapter that we read for this class is about reality TV. So I'm helping prep the reader for, she uses mass media here, but she's really referring to reality TV in her chapter. And so I'm helping prep the reader and helping them understand what this quote is referring to. All right, so this is the context. Explains how reality TV can influence the surrounding culture. And then right here, this is the manner in which it is said. So she claims that this is true. All right, those are the three things we need. Who said it? Why that person matters, that's one thing. The context and the manner in which it is said. All right, and that will be explained here. So incorporating quotes is the act of using a signal phrase. Signal phrase is the tool in order to do the act of incorporating quotes. These two ideas, incorporating quotes and signal phrases, they're related heavily. All right. So the main difference between dropping a quote and incorporating it is the use of the signal phrase. In this class, again, every time we use a quote, we want to use a signal phrase. And I've defined signal phrase as your language prior to the quote, and the signal phrase helps the reader understand and digest the quote prior to them reading it. And you should have three aspects in your signal phrase: who said the quote and why that person is important, the context of the quote, what is the author referring to when they state the quote you're going to use, and the manner in which the quote is said. And this number 3 isn't as important as the other two, especially when you're writing about text that you read, because you're really going to use the word like argues or claims or says, explains. But when you do like personal interviews, this kind of comes into play a little bit more. He says sarcastically, right? Or he jokes, or he whispers. It's not as big of a deal because people usually aren't whispering when you're reading the text, right? But I still want to see all three of these aspects in your signal phrases. So now that we have the quote and we're using it properly, where we're incorporating it properly, I want to start talking about analyzing a quote. So the quote's length is related to its importance to your essay. All right. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to use a long quote, like 3 lines or 2 lines, that means you should have 3 lines or 2 lines to say about it. We need to, when we use a quote, refer back to it and explain specific language in the quote, why that quote matters. We can't just drop a quote and leave it and not talk about it later. So if you have a big quote, what you're saying is all that stuff matters. And then that means you have to say a lot about it when you analyze it. All right. Now, if you have a short section of a quote, you can get away with saying less about it, but you can still analyze it for a long time. That's just up to you. But the length of the quote is directly related to its importance in your essay. All right. And notice this: if you use a quote that is 3 lines, you should have at least 3 lines to say about it. I already said that. And if you use a quote that is longer than 3 lines, there's a different way to format it, and we're not going to discuss that in this class because I want you to go through and clip quotes and only use parts that you need. And I don't want you to fall back in kind of the lazy way of approaching quotes is just, hey, I'm just going to quote half the page and throw it in there and move on. And so I don't want you to use quotes longer than 3 lines in this class. All right. If you have questions about that, you can always email me, and maybe there's exceptions. So analysis and see paragraphs. When we talk about analyzing a quote, we should be looking at a paragraph as a whole. All right. So the topic sentence should be your opinion, not a quote. Then we'll use a quote in our example. And then in the explanation, that's where you analyze the quote. So today, if you think about it in terms of C paragraphs, we're going to be working on the explanation